So, welcome everybody. I am Nancy Siegel of Solutions for the Workplace, and with me is my partner in crime, Ellen Steverson. And this is our podcast on bite sized career strategies. We are going to do a series on interesting career related Google searches. Google recently published a map where they shared the most Google recently posted a map where they shared career searches in every state. And this was a really fascinating study. People Googled everything from how to earn more money to how to quit, federal jobs versus private sector jobs. Should you prepare to look for a job, what to wear, and social media do's and don'ts, plus every other thing you can possibly imagine. There was a huge range. So Ellen and I are going to tackle this. Ellen is our private sector expert. I am a federal expert, and we're going to address some of these issues and popular searches from those perspectives. So today we're going to start out with something you may be familiar with, and we've talked about it before, and that is what to wear. In Georgia, the most popular search was all about business clothes, but Texas and Ohio had a whole nother issue around clothing. Go for it, Ellen.
Thank you, Nancy, and hello, everybody. Yes, today we're talking about, do clothes really still matter at work? And obviously, lots of people in three different states are still talking about business clothes. In Texas, they talked about corporate Goth. And in Ohio, people are Googling gender neutral clothes. So in three states across the country, people are still very interested in pretty much what to wear at work. And does it really matter? And in my opinion, it still does really matter. Wouldn't you agree, Nancy?
I absolutely agree. And I think this is exacerbated by the fact many people, especially those in office jobs, have been home for 2 years. And as they go back into the workplace, are they going to bring their sweatsuits and pajamas with them, or are they going to transition? So this is something a lot of people are talking about.
Absolutely. And that is a very good point to start with, and it's kind of twofold, like you brought up. One, we are now going back to work and into an office setting, so our clothing might need to be updated and refreshed. But also, are you dressing appropriately on Zoom? I have personally somewhat been a little horrified to some of the meetings I've been called to this last 2 years and what people are showing up wearing. And I have asked my candidates, is this what you wear at your meetings for your Zoom call for work? And they're answering yes. And then they're wondering why they're not getting promoted or what's going on. And could it be they're dressing inappropriately?
Absolutely. I've had the same experience. I've seen people that clearly have not gotten out of bed, including sitting in bed during professional meetings. I don't mean on the bed, I mean in the bed. I've seen unbelievable. I've seen lots of sweatshirts, lots of clothes that most people would not wear to work. Now, I do think what you wear to work or in work settings depends, of course, on what it is you do.
And I would add, though, what you're wearing to work should also be taken into consideration of where you want to go next. So what I mean by that is a lot of times when I do business coaching, I say to people who may own their own business, but they're still the guys spray washing the house or painting the house, because I work with a lot of service-based entrepreneurs. again, they need to start wearing collared shirts and having their logos on their shirt and stop looking like they're the person actually doing the work, so they have a bigger image and need to hire people in an office. If you really want to go to the next level and get promoted, you need to be thinking forward and start wearing your clothes a little bit differently so you are in that role as well. Would you agree, Nancy?
I totally agree. Now, let's be real about this. The days of three-piece suits are, for most people, over.
Everybody listening, please make sure you're looking at the culture and the workplace you're at. I have a friend in the mortgage industry. That man will not take off a suit, and he expects everybody in his office to be dressed somewhat suit related. So again, you got to know the culture.
And you should know the culture before you interview.
Oh, absolutely. Good point. Excellent point. Know the culture, but still dress up one next level. I had a corporate guy from Dick's Sporting Good, and he was furious at all the people showing up in interviews in shorts. Well, they wear very nice type of shorts, but that doesn't mean you show up on the interview with shorts. Things to think about.
Well, and something else to think about is safety.
Absolutely. And that is like one of the number one things most people don't address or don't think about when they're annoyed that they can't walk around in four-inch heels at work. It's not because your boss doesn't want you to be fashionable. It's because it's a safety risk, right? So again, you do have to think about safety for your employer as well.
Absolutely. And so can you bring yourself to work? Yes, you can, but a moderated version of yourself would be my view. Now, I realize I'm a little old-fashioned here, and I'm willing to own that, but work is work. It's not your house.
Right, and I think that's a valid point. When I was first coming up in the workforce, I definitely had what I called my street clothes, my nightclub clothes, and my work clothes. Some people have their Sunday best, whatever. But we really have gone to this idea of wearing whatever we want whenever we feel like it. And that really can have a negative impact on your career, because no matter how much we fight bias, no matter how much we think it's unfair, at the end of the day, we see it time and time again in interviewing, especially those who go nicely dressed, ironed clothes, looking great, do far better, just image-wise, than those who are coming in with crumply, wrinkly old clothes. And again, offers are made to those who impress, not those who look like they came out of the hamper.
You want to look the part. And is that shallow? Sure, I'm happy to have that discussion. It's shallow, but you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So if you are, like they are talking about in Texas, corporate goth, it's okay to wear black, right? But you might want to leave some of the skulls and other sort of more artifacts or indications on the edges of your gothness.
Right. And for those that aren't very familiar with goth, it's predominantly you're wearing all black outfits, and it goes back to even the tidbits of jewelry, pocket watches, all of that kind of rolls into this corporate goth. And I definitely have seen some beautiful pieces of jewelry recently at TJ Maxx, actually, that are goth related. You want to make it a little bit more sophisticated if you're at work. Is that bias? Absolutely. But there's a way to do it with professionalism. And then there's a way to look like you're in your street clothes. We want to be at work looking like we're there for work. As a matter of fact, there was a study recently done, an office team did this study where they researched or surveyed 1,000 different senior managers, HR, and employees. And 86% of the managers and professionals said clothing choices did affect chances of being promoted. And no matter how much we think we're becoming a society that anything goes, at the end of the day, clothes still really do matter. And that's just what the study and the research still shows.
And I don't disagree. So at the end of the day, you're making a choice, right? What's more important to you? Broadly expressing yourself in ways that other people may rightly or wrongly, find uncomfortable or moving forward in your career. And that goes not only for those of you who are working in person, but also those of you who are fully remote. You need to make sure that you are treating those Teams or Zoom or whatever other kind of shared video platform you are on. You need to make those occasions professional, at least from what is visible. And that means put together for everything that people can see on camera. People will take you more seriously, rightly or wrongly, and that's what you want if you are career-minded.
Absolutely. And, at the end of the day, I thought the survey I mentioned, they also discuss how much time people spend, the average person. And I thought it was interesting that the older they became, so the 18 to 34-year-olds were spending 13 minutes getting ready for work, the 35 to 54, and this is just dressing. The 35 to 54-year-olds were spending 10 minutes, and the 55 and older was down to 7 minutes. Now, I could make the argument as we get older, we just have better clothes hanging in the closet so we can get to them quicker. And I thought this was very interesting. Men actually took more time picking out their clothing than women. Men, an average of 12 minutes, and they do think about it longer and prepare. And the women only 9 minutes. I thought that was kind of fun reading as far as that goes too. So I thought I'd share that fun fact. Because who would think? I would have thought it would be the opposite. I would argue that the women are spending more time on fashion than the men.
Interesting. So again, people in 3 states are still Googling what to wear and what not to wear at work. All right, so we've been talking a lot, Ellen, about kind of generally, but what do you think the private sector is all about in terms of clothing and what to wear to work?
So in the private sector, I think it's very important for everyone to really understand the type of business, the culture, and the safety issues at work. I do think in the private sector, very important. If you work for a larger corporation where you plan on moving up and have the opportunity to move up, clothes become very important as far as, making sure you're dressing for that next level. If you're working for a small base business of 50 people or less, I still think you're going to look at the culture and see what the employer allows and doesn't allow, but you still want to be the person walking through the door in the nicer clothes. If you're grooming yourself, notice I said you're grooming yourself, not they're grooming you. But if you're grooming yourself for management someday, even at your first job, you need to start looking, being aware, and grooming yourself for those type of levels. So how you dress, how you behave, all of that matters. And of course, obviously in the private sector, depending on the job, you need to make sure you always have on your safety equipment and things like that. What about in the federal government though, Nancy? I think everybody in the federal government is wearing suits. Is that true?
No, that is far from true. So I do think for the most part, the federal government is more casual, but that doesn't mean sloppy, and that doesn't mean inappropriate. And I've also seen significant differences in culture between organizations. There are some agencies that I work with where people are in suits all the time. And there are other agencies where that simply is not true. Some of it depends on how forward-facing you are. If you are interacting with the public, the expectation is that you step it up a notch, right? Whereas if your functions are back room, then obviously that's less important. And what I recommend everybody do, whether you're in the federal government or the private sector, is if you do have a business casual workplace, even in those situations, you should have a suit, whether you're a man or a woman or however you identify. You should have a suit hanging somewhere on the back of your door or on a hook in your cubicle, because there are occasions where we think business casual is okay for that day, but it turns out it's not. And so you want to be prepared. So regardless of what the culture is, to me, you have to be prepared for that next level at all times in your office.
I totally agree with you. Great advice. I mean, think about it. You go to work one day in a casual outfit and your boss is a little bit annoyed because they have guests coming in from a potential client and you're not dressed appropriately. How cool would it be to be like, oh, I didn't know we were having that meeting this morning. Let me go change. And then you walk back in with a suit on or a jacket or looking really good. So I think, having backup clothes sometimes is very helpful. I think that's great advice. And the reality of it is you don't have to spend a ton of money on this clothing either. I think that's one of the problems is people think, oh, well, if I go and get nicer clothes, it's going to cost me money and I don't have that type of money. Again, there's plenty of retail shops that are discount shops. Things go on sale, thrift stores, all that type of stuff that you can definitely find a few nice pieces, a nice blazer, a nice collared shirt for women and things like that. So that was a great tip, Nancy. I know when I worked in Manhattan, I always kept like 3 pairs of shoes in my office because sometimes I would be in a casual flat, even though I might be in a skirt, I was in a casual flat. And then all of a sudden my boss would be like, hey, I need you to come in and present. And I'd slip on those high heels and walk in like I'd been wearing them all day. So again, I think that's a good idea.
You have other tips you think people should know about in terms of what to wear to work or on camera?
Well, I think, again, we all need to be a little, when you're on camera, be aware of where the camera's pointing, be aware of what you look like on camera. At work, one of the mistakes I see people making often is, again, they're wearing clothes way too tight, so buttons bulge, things like that. I actually had a client one time where the company came to her and multiple times had coached her kind of on clothing, and she didn't really take it seriously. And her comeback was always, I can't afford it. And they actually gave her a little gift one time for some money to buy clothes. Now, is that crossing the line? In some ways, maybe it is, but in other ways, it really helped her to get serious about looking better. And then sure enough, as soon as she started taking it seriously and got some nice clothes, guess what? 6 months later, she was up for a promotion. So again, it does really matter.
Absolutely. And in my management classes, how people come to work is a constant concern from managers. So I think you're absolutely right. One other piece of advice that I would share is that if you are online, you should be aware of what your background is, and you want to make sure not to wear the same color as your background.
Oh, good point. Yeah, when you're videoing, yep, and just a Zoom call. Absolutely. And I've been told not to wear so many patterns because of the digitalizing of it or whatever. And I like to wear patterns. I like to wear florals and different things like that. So I went and got some solid colored shirts, and it does make a difference. It's been fun learning about different things with the camera and all of that. Although frustrating at times, I get it, America. But in the same breath, it's been kind of really interesting. And it's amazing how quickly women are all wearing scarves, even though they're in Texas and it's 90 degrees out. But that scarf makes us look so much nicer on camera.
And virtual meetings are not going away. They may be minimized as people transition back to the offices, but they are not, at least in my view, going away permanently.
Absolutely not. And I will say videoing and for interviews, job search, all of that is becoming more and more popular. So even LinkedIn's offering video on LinkedIn now. So again, I think we're all going to have to acclimate to being on video.
All right. So thank you very much, Ellen Steverson, Starting Block Career Services. I am Nancy Siegel, Solutions for the Workplace. Tune in next time to hear us talk about something else we learned about what's going on in each of your states in terms of most popular career-related searches. Thank you very much. If you enjoyed this podcast, please visit Nancy or Ellen's website for additional information about our services, a free tip sheet which highlights our discussion today, and be sure to tune in to our next podcast, which will be posted soon. Thank you.